As we just noted, Mosab Abu Toha is a Palestinian writer. He's a poet, a scholar, and has worked hard on various libraries as well in Gaza. He was in Gaza when Israel began its massive assault after the October 7th attack, and he was able to flee with his wife and young daughter, who's an American citizen, though just barely. He was there for about 2 months when he was able to flee. He is now a Pulitzer Prize winner as a result of a series of essays he wrote last year in The New Yorker that chronicles and powerfully expresses the extreme human suffering and humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. We are delighted to have him with us tonight to understand what has been happening there. Mosab, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Of course, it is my great pleasure. Thank you so much, Glenn, for having me.
Absolutely. So I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. I wish we had something less depressing and horrific to talk about, but the world is what it is. So I just want to get a little bit of understanding from you, since one of the things that you do is convey thoughts and emotions in words as a poet, as a writer, obviously a now widely recognized one. As somebody who's lived in Gaza, you're not, it's not new to you to be bombed by the Israelis. Israel has been bombing Gaza, killing civilians many, many times over many, many years. But I think it was very obvious for a variety of reasons, not just October 7th, but the composition of the current Israeli government, the obvious support the world was going to give them, that this was going to be far worse, and quickly it turned out to be. So you were in Gaza for about 2 months before you were able to get out. What were those 2 months like for you and your family?
First of all, it is important to note that I was born in a refugee camp. My parents were born themselves in refugee camps. My grandparents on both sides were expelled from Jaffa in 1948. So I lived in Gaza all my life, and I was a witness and a survivor of so many Israeli assaults. I was wounded in one of the airstrikes in 2008, 2009. I survived by chance, and I still have the wounds in my body, in my neck, in my forehead, in my cheeks, and in my shoulder. So surviving the genocide in Gaza was not the first time I survived the Israeli aggression. In fact, I was in the United States between 2022, 2023. I returned to Gaza in 2023 after I finished my MFA from Syracuse University. And I then traveled to the United States again for a literary festival, Palestine Rights, which was held at UPenn in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. And I returned to Gaza 10 days before October 7th, and I started, my work. I resumed my work as a teacher in Gaza.
Can I just interrupt you there, because that literary festival that you're referring to, shortly before October 7th. As I recall, there was a gigantic movement, this is before October 7th, to have that canceled simply on the grounds that people like you and other Palestinians were participating and speaking critically of Israel. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Then I want to get back to what the experience was in Gaza.
Yeah, I would like to say, Glenn, that the criticism that me or other people are critical of Israel is not true. We are not critical of Israel. All we are doing is exposing, the crimes that Israel has been committing, whether it's in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank. So I don't care if it was a different country, if it was a different people, I would still do the same thing, because this is happening to me and to my people, to my parents, to my children, and also to my grandchildren. So it is not that people in Palestine or Palestinians or even pro-Palestinian people who care about human rights, it's not that they are critical of Israel or whatever you call it. It's that people are talking and advocating on behalf of the people who have been living under occupation for 77 years. And this is perceived as a crime. When you talk about crimes that are committed by a state that has been created in 1948 and that's been funded by, unfortunately, Western countries and also the United States until today, even as they are committing an ongoing genocide. So it is shameful that the festival, some of the participants were canceled or they were not permitted to be on campus at the University of Pennsylvania in September 2023. But here we are in 2025. Palestinian people, Palestinian writers, Palestinian journalists have been the main target of the Israeli airstrikes. And Palestinian activists and pro-Palestinian activists have been canceled from so many places. Even artists, even singers, they were canceled from big events because of what they say about the Palestinian people and their right to exist and to exist with dignity.
Yeah, I mean, we covered so many censorship-based reactions to suppress pro-Palestinian speech, but I just thought it was important to remember that that's been happening in the United States well before October 7th, and in fact, just a week or two before at one of our great universities, University of Pennsylvania, where apparently just the mere presence of Palestinian voices, in a view of a lot of people, justified trying to get the entire event canceled and did end up getting some of the people banned. All right, so you went back to Gaza after that event, and shortly thereafter, the October 7th attack happened, and then followed by this massive Israeli air assault on Gaza, unlike, I think, anything that has happened in Gaza for a long time, despite how terrible and fatal so many of the other ones were. Just in your own words, like, what was that like, just to be constantly surrounded by death, by the risk of death, by the fear that you would go to bed and not wake up? How did you navigate that?
So it is important, Glenn, to note that Palestinians in Gaza have been massacred by the Israeli forces, the Israeli army. I was 21 years old. Now I was 31 years old when I left Gaza for the last time. I've never, before October 7th, I've never in my life seen an Israeli soldier. Israel was bombing us from the sky. Israel was firing at us from gunboats and warships in the sea, in our sea, just 7 or 8 nautical miles off our shore. They were shooting at us. They were killing us. They were dropping bombs on us. Without us seeing, I've never seen an Israeli, not even an Israeli soldier, never seen an Israeli soldier, an Israeli civilian, in my life. So we have been killed. We have been abducted. We have been injured. Our houses have been destroyed on top of our families without us seeing who these people are who have been killing us without seeing. I mean, they see us from on a screen. They see us as dots, black and white dots moving on the ground, or maybe structures on the ground. And lately, they have been filming us, through their drones. People who are trying to get aid. There are so many videos of people who try to go back to their homes to collect food, and then there is a footage of an Israeli drone missile hitting them and killing them. So I lived in Gaza all my life, and I've never seen an Israeli soldier. I was wounded, and I don't know, whether that soldier knew, or whether that Israeli pilot who dropped the bomb in 2009, he knew that they killed 7 people in that airstrike, and they wounded a 16-year-old child who became a Pulitzer Prize winning author. So when Israel attacked Gaza, it's not only a military attack. Israel did not only drop bombs; they did not fire bullets at people, unarmed people, but they also shut off electricity, shut off water, shut off food trucks. They control everything. Right? So it's not like Israel just attacked Gaza militarily. No, they blocked everything. Even as we are talking, people do not have not only enough food, because we always talk about the lack of food, the lack of water, the lack of shelter, but there is lack of medicine. One of the relatives of my brother-in-law who was wounded in a strike that killed his brother 20 days ago, and I wrote about him in my last piece in the New Yorker. He was at the hospital, at the Shifa hospital, and the shrapnel covered his body, and his arms and his body was wrapped in gauze, and he complained to the doctors that he has some pain in his body. And you know what they gave him? They gave him something like Tylenol, something that you get, you take when you have a headache. There's no medicine in Gaza, and even there is no healthy food. The kind of food that is entering Gaza is canned food. It's canned beans, canned peas, sugar, frying oil. There is no fresh food, not only for people to grow normally, but even for those, the dozens of thousands of Palestinians who were injured. There is no healthy food, fresh food, like vegetable, like fruit, like meat, for them to heal. So people in Gaza are dying several times. And if you allow me, because we are talking today in Gaza, it's 2:20 a.m. It's Thursday today, June 26th. As we are talking, just in the past hour, Israel bombed a tent in Khan Yunis, killing 5 people. And before that, yesterday, they killed 101 people all over the Gaza Strip. Of these people was a whole family from Ad-Dahduh family. And I wrote their names on my social media. We don't get to know the names of these people who are killed. The father is named Salah al-Dahduh. His wife is Salwa al-Dahduh. Their children are Ahmed, a son, Abdullah, a son, Mustafa, a son, Ala, a daughter. And the brother of the father was killed, and then there was a nephew. So the Israel attack on Gaza is not by killing them, but even by bombing the internet, bombing the electricity, not allowing people even to report. So there is difficulty in reporting, not only by not allowing journalists, international journalists, to go to Gaza, but they are also bombing, every means that Palestinians can use to report on their miseries and their suffering and their demise. So that's why it is very important to talk about what's happening in Gaza and also in Palestine every day. Israel is killing people in Gaza, in Palestine, every day. That's why every day we have to speak, to talk about Palestine.
One of the, and there's a lot of it, obviously, we could talk about, we cover a lot the atrocities pretty much on a daily basis or close to it on this show. But I do want to get to that as well, just some of the more recent things that have been happening that, as I said, have been even more covered up than usual, not just by the lack of media in Gaza, international media, and the lack of internet, but also by so much attention paid to what was happening in Iran. But one of the things I'd like to ask you is, one of the ways that, because I had John Mearsheimer on my show yesterday, and we were both talking about how is it that the world can watch what's going on in Gaza, even to the extent that we get to see it. How is it that the West, that's paying for it, that's enabling it, can watch what's happening, and it's just no one seems to mind. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems bothered by it. It just kind of goes on. No one is even close to stopping it. We just saw Trump order Netanyahu to turn the planes around from Iran, which obviously Biden could have done, Trump could have do at any time, and they just won't. I'm trying to figure out how can this be? And I think one of the ways that happens is the language of dehumanization. So I think a lot of Americans have this perception of what Gaza is, what Palestine is, radically different than the reality. And I was interested in the work that you've done in creating libraries in Gaza. You're obviously very well spoken. You just won a Pulitzer Prize for your writing in English. I've had Gazans on my show before who are very similar, highly educated, well spoken. There's a whole network there were at least, of Gazan universities and advanced centers of learning that are all now destroyed. Gaza had one of the highest literacy rates in the world prior to October 7th. Some of the best doctors that are respected all around the world as specialists in their field. Can you talk about what Gazan society and Gazan culture is like and how it has been just so completely destroyed in the last 20 months?
Sure. Yeah. Before I answer your question, I would like to highlight the fact that for 2 years now, not a single student in Gaza went to school. In fact, the schools have become shelters. As we are talking, just half an hour at the same time that Israel bombed a tent in Khan Yunis, Israel bombed a classroom on the 3rd floor of a school called Amr ibn al-As in Sheikh Ridwan in Gaza City, and 2 or 3 people were reported to be killed. So 2 years, no schools. So anyone who was 5 years old when Israel attacked Gaza on October 7th hasn't gone to school for 2 years. So this 5-year-old child, if my children were to be there at the moment, my 5-year-old child would have missed his first grade and second grade. And for 2 years, students have missed their high school diploma tests. So 2 years. So people in Gaza are missing not only their life, but even those who survive, they are missing a lot in their own lives. The Gaza Strip lies on the beach of the Mediterranean Sea. Gaza is rich for its plants and the trees. One of the best places in Gaza is a city or town called Beit Lahia, and it is very, very famous for strawberry farms. My father-in-law is a strawberry farmer, and they used also to plant corn, onion, watermelon, oranges, and they used to when it is allowed, to export some of the strawberries to the West Bank. Gaza is very beautiful, even though it has been under occupation since 1984, 48, it's been under siege since 2007. Israel controls how much food gets into Gaza, how many hours of electricity is available in Gaza, how much medicine is allowed to enter Gaza, what kind of equipment, medical equipment, get into Gaza, how many books get into Gaza. Because when I was trying to build the Edward Said Public Library, 2 branches in 2017, 2019, and unfortunately Israel destroyed the 2 libraries just like they destroyed all the universities in Gaza. So Israel was, in control of the entry of these books into Gaza. Sometimes the books would be delayed by months. It usually takes 8 weeks for any box or any package to enter Gaza. So Israel was controlling every single aspect of our lives in Gaza. But despite that, we managed to make Gaza as much beautiful as we could. But this campaign of destroying Gaza is nonstop. Israel has been blowing up the houses in Beit Lahia. 70%. This is an old statistic. 70% of Gaza has been either destroyed or damaged by not only Israeli airstrikes while people are sleeping inside, but even the houses that people had to leave because Israel announced them to be combat zone. Israel has been systematically blowing these houses up, and there are so many videos of Israeli soldiers, documenting the blowing up of neighborhoods, of schools, of their bulldozers, destroying a hospital in North Gaza, just next to the Indonesian hospital in Beit Lahia. So Israel has been systematically destroying everything in Gaza. So the question is not about when will there be a ceasefire in Gaza, although the ceasefire is just a beginning of a bigger change in Palestine. But the question is, even after this ceasefire, Israel is trying to make it impossible for people, to live again. So let's say that there is a ceasefire today. There are no schools in Gaza. 70% of the population in Gaza do not have homes. They are living in tents, even though they are living in tents, including some of my family members. These tents get to be bombed. Just a few days ago, Glenn, my neighbor was killed in an airstrike when Israel hit a group of people walking in the streets. She was inside her tent, and these tents are, they are pulled up in the street. On the street. So she was killed while she was inside her tent. Her mother is still critically wounded, and all her brothers were wounded. So Israel continues to destroy, to decimate as much of Gaza as possible. And there is a systematic destruction of the refugee camps in Gaza. Something that I wrote about in one of my pieces in the New Yorker is that Israel is not only destroying Gaza, the cities and the villages and the towns, but they are also destroying refugee camps. So, the refugee camps after 1948, it was a group of tents here and there. And then, their refugee status continued for years and years. People started to build rooms from concrete, and then over the years, they started to build multi-story buildings. So the refugee camp changed into a small city. So Israel currently destroyed much of the Jabali refugee camp, the largest refugee camp in Gaza. So these people are now who lived in the refugee camp, or people who were born in refugee camps like me, and now are living in tents on the street, maybe sheltering in a school, in a hospital. These people are dreaming of returning to the refugee camp. So this is the fault of the world. This is the fault of the world because they left the Palestinian people to live in refugee camps. They left them without protection, and they not only left them without protection, they continue to support, to fund Israel's genocide, and they, like the United States cut its funding for UNRWA, which has been responsible for the delivery of aid and for the education of so many people, including me. So this world is not working properly, really. It's very strange for us to be watching this even 20 months after the start of the genocide, and for me to watch it from here, from the United States.
Yeah, it's got to be almost impossible. just to underscore the point too, which I know I don't need to tell you, but for people who are watching, I mean, the control of Gaza by the Israelis, including it probably intensified since they removed troops, which they had there in 2005. The control that continued was so great that, the Israelis had phrases like really macabre, horrific, dark phrases like mowing the lawn, which meant let's just go in and kill some Palestinians, or let's put the Palestinians on a diet, when they would cut back the amount of food that they allowed into Gaza. So this has been the mentality going on for a long time. I wanted to ask you something. Obviously, we talk a lot about the number of people in Gaza who have been slaughtered since October 7th. The Israelis are now open about the fact that they want to make Gaza uninhabitable, to force people to leave, to kill them until they leave, to destroy civilization until they leave, that it's at least a policy of ethnic cleansing. One of the things I think about a lot, though, is for the people who do survive, who are able to survive the genocide, survive this ethnic cleansing, this onslaught, I have to think about how is it possible for them to have a future. Here in Rio de Janeiro, I live in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, which is a city, especially in poor areas, that has a very high level of violence, drug gangs and the like, very high murder rates. And I know some people who grew up there, and they talk about, one time when I was 7 years old, I saw a dead body on the ground, or twice when I was in my teenage years, I saw a gun shootout. And they talk about how psychologically scarring that is for life, like to be exposed to those kind of horrors even once or twice while you're growing up. And here you have this massive civilian population in Gaza. 50% of them are children. And the last 2 years, their lives have been nothing but bombing and destruction and murder and fear of death. And, just psychologically, how do you think that the people who are there, who do survive it, will be able to overcome that and at some point return to a normal semblance of life?
Well, this is a very hard question to answer. It's very obvious that a population that's been trying to survive. I mean, I don't like to say that people live in Gaza. No, people are trying to survive in Gaza, because there is a difference between living in Gaza and trying to survive a genocide. So these people, for 20 months at least, they haven't lived a single day without suffering, without looking for food, looking for medicine, looking for water. I mean, Glenn, I was in Gaza during the first 2 months. I remember walking in the street, looking for water, to fill a bucket of water, for my children or for my wife, to wash the dishes, maybe to have a shower, in the school, because there are no services in the school shelters, by the way. I remember walking in the street and seeing 5-year-old children, standing in line to fill a bucket of water for their families, or children maybe 10 years old. I saw some of my students standing in line, to get a pack of bread. And that was in October and November 2023. That was before Israel tightened its genocide. So these children, 5 years old or 7 years old, these are no longer children. These children are not practicing childhood. So this is a very dangerous. This is a very dangerous reality, and it should also be a signal that there would be a very dangerous future for these children. 50% of the population in Gaza are children. So the question is for the Americans, for the Europeans who have been funding Israel's genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians in Gaza and also in the West Bank. So what do they expect of these Palestinians once this genocide comes to an end? So what kind of people are the world expecting to see in the future? That's a question that I don't have an answer to, but I'm sure that these people, Palestinian people who have been living in Gaza, who have been surviving the genocide in Gaza, these will no longer be normal people. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a psychologist, but I think people in the world, especially officials and politicians and decision makers, they should think seriously about this. What kind of people are we going to see after the genocide comes to an end?
Absolutely.
What kind of people are going to see, who have been living under occupation? I don't have an answer to that, but if you think about it, I think there are many answers.
Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.